Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on the channel. Excuse me. It's been a pleasure having you this week. Today is Friday, the 30th of May. We're coming to the tail end of this month. And all I can say is thank you to all our community. But as as the case always is, allow me get some things out of the way. Make sure our audios are in place, so that we can get this broadcast kick started. As we wait for more of our community members to join, perhaps we can get to see some new faces in today's broadcasts. It's about 10:38 a.m. here right in Kampala. So, but we're going to be speaking all matters at transfers, and then we'll be speaking about Arsenal. There's some news in the Arsenal camp, and then there's some news in the Arsenal camp. Of course, there's yesterday Liam Delap choosing Chelsea over Manchester United, quite the punch in the guts. And then, managerial movements around Italy. I was reading a comment from somebody who said that that they keep recycling the same managers. Well, that's how they view things, and that's their opinion. Then that episode that I did promise you about Manchester City, that one did premiere today morning at 9 a.m. So do not miss catching it on the channel. Just go on the channel and check it out. Why I think Man City could be unstoppable next season. I'll also try to leave a link to that video down in the description of this particular broadcast, as much more. So as we wait for others to join us, let's also update this. As we wait for others to join us. And then we'll speak Liverpool, we'll speak Tottenham Hotspurs. There's some news at Tottenham Hotspurs because their defender in Cristiano Romero is being pursued by a Spanish giant. Will they be able to keep a hold of him? Again, that remains to be seen. And much more, really. But it's always a pleasure to have you guys on the broadcast. So, like I said, about that video regarding Man City, we'll look at briefly what their season looked like, of course, and then we'll look at some of the transfers they made in January. We'll also look at the players that could exit the club at the end of the season, and then more importantly, the players they've been linked with the potential move for and what that could mean for them next season. And I thought it was an exciting conversation. It's not too long. It's about, I think, about 30 minutes or thereabouts. So look at that episode on the channel. Otherwise, I want to say welcome to the community, to all our new subscribers. Thank you for your contribution towards our progress in as far as building this community is concerned. So really appreciative of that respect. Anyways, of course, tomorrow the UEFA Champions League final is going to be on. I will get to discuss that tonight. We'll get to discuss that tonight between Inter Milan and Paris Saint-Germain. Now, the reason as to why we are not going around to it is largely because there's been so much going on around transfers, and of course, in the immediate aftermath of Chelsea's successful triumph in the UEFA Conference League final, but we're going to be looking to do something around that as well. And we'll get to, speak more about the final, but we'll be speaking about it later in the night for our late evening broadcast. We'll speak about in tomorrow's broadcast. That's tomorrow between 11 to midday. We'll be coming to you live to speak matters UEFA Champions League final and more of that. But do not forget that at the Bayer Arena, or that's at the Allianz Arena, Inter Milan will be up against PSG for the finals of the UEFA Champions League on Saturday. But for now, let's kick things off at Arsenal, where the Gunners have agreed to extend the contract of Gabriel Magalhaes. Now, of course, pending a few minor details here and there to iron out the contract. Remember, the Brazilian international had attracted a lot of interest from Saudi pro leagues, and that's why, for those of you that do remember, at the start, I think, of this season, the just concluded season, he was sort of initially frozen out of the team, and because he was largely being linked with a potential move away from Arsenal, a lot of interest from the Saudi pro league clubs and that kind of thing. But anyways, it's been Andre Bata prioritized that as one of the main things he had to work on as soon as he walked into that door. Of course, there are other contract talks among with other stars with whom they want to extend their contracts with, but it was a priority for the new sporting director, that's Andre Bata, and Gabriel Magalhaes' contract is going to be extended. Of course, we will know more in the near future in regards to the length of what the new contract will look like and that kind of thing. But for now, the two parties are really close to agreeing to a deal. Most of the details are done. It's just those minor details that need to be ironed out before he can put pen to paper on a new contract. So that news did come out yesterday, last evening, and it is believed that the new deal is going to be 5 years. Yes, 5 years to extend to up to June 2030. That's the expectation, as according to the BBC. Yes, that's according to Sammy Mokbel of the BBC. There, he did report that it will be a 5-year contract already for Gabriel Magalhaes, who has been a leader in that team. He's been a leader in that backline. William Saliba acknowledges just as much. Mikel Arteta was speaking about him, I think, in the build-up to that game against PSG at home in the first leg of the semi-finals, when he referenced saying that he looked, as they concluded their warm-up, he looked at the players that were there on the sidelines: Kai Havertz, Ricardo Carafiori, Gabriel Magalhaes, and all the rest. Thomas Partey, of course, who had been suspended at the time, the experienced Jorginho, and he couldn't help it, feel dismayed that he had all that talent, all first team starters potentially really out on the sidelines. And ever since Gabriel Magalhaes went out injured, I think that was sometime in early Feb or mid-Feb, as Arsenal beat up against Fulham by 2-1. He suffered that hamstring injury and then needed surgery. Arsenal weren't the same. Yes, of course, he was replaced by the very capable Jakub Kiwior. That's the 25-year-old Polish international. But that notwithstanding, as good as a defender Jakub Kiwior is, he's not that good a leader. Not to take anything away, but he's not that commanding. And I think in some form of respect, he always looked to William Saliba for guidance as his senior. And yet, when Saliba is playing with Gabriel Magalhaes is his sort of quote-unquote senior, and he provides the leadership in that backline. So that's the kind of profile player that Arsenal did miss for the last 3 months of the season. Then when you look at some of the goals they conceded, Arsenal conceded a whole lot of goals through set pieces, and about 40% of those goals were conceded in the absence of Gabriel Magalhaes. I think about 8 goals. So that again tells you about his, defensive solidity, the kind of leadership he provides during set piece plays and beyond that, but also the goal scoring threat that he provides. are going on the other side. When Arsenal were beating up against Tottenham Hotspur by a goal to nil at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he did score that only goal of the game that won them the game. How many times have we seen him rise to the occasion to be the target man? We did see, I think, his goal, I think, against Man City. So really, excuse me, really, a really important player in that Arsenal dressing room. And so it is without doubt that Arsenal were eager to extend his contract. Now, beyond him, there's other players whose contracts were due to be renewed. Of course, the conversations continue between the club and those respective players to have their contracts renewed. And among them is Thomas Partey, of course, who Mikel Arteta did say that they do want to keep. Now, again, this is what really is happening with Arsenal, is that one, you look at the priorities they have in this transfer window, and of course, among those priorities is signing a striker, is signing a right winger, is signing a central midfielder, and of course, they are on the verge of completing a deal for Martin Zubimendi. But until he, holds that shirt and he takes those media duties and takes those photos, we can not say it's complete. So then they may look to sign a defender, especially now that Kian Tierney has left the club, or will be rejoining Celtic. Zichenko is up on the market, so they could be in the market for a left midfielder. Good morning, John Joseph. Good to have you back on the broadcast. Welcome back to the broadcast. Much appreciated for the love and support. So then they need, a number 2 goalkeeper. So those are some of their priorities. But beyond that, they also need a creative midfielder. So those are their transfer priorities. And when you look with that respect, you wouldn't want to be thinking that you want to that you lost Thomas Partey, although it is still a possibility, even when reports do indicate that they are all equally close to agreeing to new terms over a contract that could be 1 year with an option to extend for a further year, or a 2-year contract extension. Again, we'll wait to confirm that. I'm doing well, my brother John. I hope you are too as well. How is Nigeria this morning? So with that said, they do not want to be, thinking to themselves, okay, this thing is failed, and that's why, by the way, they want to wrap it as soon as possible with Thomas Partey. They want to know what the future looks like, because if they are not to agree to a new contract, that means they have to rush to the markets. And of course, they do have options as part of the background work done, should it be in the event that Thomas Partey, sort of leaves. But then that would suddenly change their priorities in as far as the transfer market is concerned, but they need to sign a striker. So that's why it's crucial. But also, his current contract, that's for Gabriel Magalhaes, was set to expire in June 2027. That's about what? 2 years? Yes, 2 years left with it. So he extends it to June 2030, and then he gets to stay at the club. By the time, I think the contract, that current contract, that if it does eventually agree to it and puts pen to paper, it will take him to what, about 31 years of age at Arsenal at the time. And then the other players whose contracts they are looking to extend, Bukayo Saka is one of those. For Gabriel Martinelli, it's not too urgent, but he's at the tail end of the list. So, but Bukayo Saka is among those. Then Ethan Nwaneri, the youngster, as well as Miles Lewis Kelly. In fact, as of yesterday evening, we're hearing reports that, according to the Guardian Sport, saying that that Arsenal are yet to make headway in contract talks with Ethan Nwaneri, and Real Madrid have started circling around. But again, I do not know if I do believe that story, especially bearing in mind that Real Madrid are close to signing Alvaro Carreras, that is from Benfica, to join them as their left back option. So really, it's an interesting conversation, but you can never say never. Sometimes there's no smoke without fire. And sometimes, for me, I get the feeling that maybe some of these stories are instigated by player agents to try and expedite things, to try and show that there's bigger interest in in their players, so that they sort of force the hand of the current club to give them bigger contracts, maybe to look at a wage revamp beyond what the club had initially estimated to give that player and that kind of thing. So that's usually the expectation, or what I would do gather from some of these stories. So, but so those are among on the list: Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis Kelly, Bukayo Saka, of course, Thomas Partey. Leandro Trossard is the other player whom Arsenal are looking to have his contract revised or renewed. Now, for the context of Leandro Trossard, his current contract, I think, runs until June 2027. Now, according to the Athletic, they are not looking to extend his contract in terms of years, but they are looking to revamp his pay and perhaps other terms and conditions to meet his current value, to appreciate the kind of contribution he's had for the team. He's one of those guys that has made the most appearances this season for Arsenal. So really, the Belgian international has been a crucial part of this Arsenal side in as far as this season is concerned, and that's why, to show their appreciation, they do want to extend to give him better wages. That's Leandro Trossard. So do wait for that news and more from the Arsenal camp in regards to the Belgian international, who is 30 years of age. So, I mean, by the end of his current contract, he will be 32. And we do not know. I do not know what Arsenal look at it in the sense of keeping his value in terms of extending the contract, because 1 year down the road, at the end of next season, he will have only a year left for his contract. Maybe then they will be looking to move him on. We do not know. But he played every single match in the Premier League this season. Every single match. 38 games, he made an appearance. Scored 8 goals and provided 7 assists. That's an overall goal contribution of 15. And for a player of his age and his experience, sometimes, played in his less preferred positions and that kind of thing. We do remember him being played in that kind of Martin Odegaard role when Odegaard was out injured, and he still made his contribution to the team. So really an important player, one that I do think Arsenal ought to keep, especially when it comes to purposes of squad depth. That's why I'm not of the school of thought that when Arsenal do go and sign a winger, then they should look to let go of Gabriel Martinelli, because then you would be undercutting yourself in terms of forward numbers. So you need all the numbers that you can get. So let's wait and see how that as well goes across in as regards to Arsenal, attempts to renew contracts. Then stepping away from Arsenal, let's rush down to Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea did agree to terms with Ipswich Town over the signing of Liam Delap. That's the 22-year-old England international, beating Manchester United to the punch of, in the race for the striker. Of course, his release clause of £30 million was out and cut and clear. That's what Chelsea will pay. 30% of those proceeds will go to Man City, his parent club, because they did have a sell-on clause. Man City had the first, in that contract, they had the first refusal because they had the buyback clause. Now, how does the buyback clause usually work? So, for example, you're a team like Man City, a team like Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, and you're selling one of your young players. Usually what clubs do is, and I remember Arsenal did this with Francesc Soler Fabregas when he was joining Barcelona, I think back in 2010, I think in the aftermath of the FIFA World Cup that was played in South Africa. So is that if the club that is going to join reaches a point where they are willing to sell, or they are going to sell, then the parent club where he came from first, when they have a buyback option, meaning they are given priority. Quick example, if you own a car and you sell it, let's say to your brother or to somebody, and in your contract you have a buyback clause, if that person is selling that car, they have to contact you because you have a buyback clause. That means that you'd go and buy that car for a certain amount that is pre-agreed under that contract, usually. So, for example, if let's say Man City were selling Liam Delap to Ipswich Town for maybe 10 million pounds, then Man City could say we'll be buying him back maybe at 15 million pounds or at 20 million pounds. And usually those buyback clauses also have expiry dates and those kinds of things. So, and that is where the buyback clause brings in the first refusal. So, if the parent club says, no, we are not interested in taking the player back, then that's when they get to sign for a totally different club. And that is what happened in this particular scenario. Liam Delap was in the Man City Academy, and that's why he's well known to Enzo Maresca. And it was quite key in him ending up with Chelsea or choosing Chelsea over Manchester United, among other reasons. So once he chose that, so once Man City said no, of course he chose Chelsea. Manchester United had done all the groundwork, everything to try and sign Liam Delap. All reports we made here, every news that did come out was that Man United were leading the race to sign Liam Delap from Ipswich Town, and they were in pole position to sign him. But what Ashley Sabera is back here. Good morning, Ashley. Welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Please consider liking the broadcast. But it's good to have you here. So, and Man United were quite confident, pretty much just like they are with the deal with Matthias Cunha, although we're going to speak about Matthias Cunha in just a minute. So, you say, while they had done all that, and like I've constantly said, until the player puts pen to paper on a contract, and they have that's upon completion of medical, and they hold that club shut out there and say, I'm finally here. You can never say never when it comes to transfers. So Man United did everything, and then guess what? On the final day of the Premier League, on match day 38, Chelsea beat Nottingham Forest by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Levi Colwill. They qualify for the UEFA Champions League. Then on Wednesday, they go on to beat Real Betis by 4-1. You know, we all remember Enzo Fernandez and Nicolas Jackson, Jordan Sancho, and Moises Caicedo scoring in that one, while Abed Ezauzuri scored for Real Betis. Now, what did that all mean to Chelsea? One, it meant success, but more importantly, the game against Nottingham Forest meant that Chelsea had qualified for UEFA Champions League, which is a very big bargaining tool when you do have it in your pocket, when you're trying to sign some of these players. And once Chelsea came to the table, one, with Enzo Maresca's relationship and roots, Vincent. Hi, good morning, and welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. I think Vincent, I'm seeing you here for the first time. Kindly let us know where you're joining us from, what country you're from, and also consider liking the broadcast. Please do me the absolute honor. Same goes for you, Ashley. Do me the absolute honor and like the broadcast. But more importantly, Vincent, also consider subscribing to the channel and help us continue to grow. So, because Enzo Maresca knew the player already with his, because he was also an assistant coach at Manchester City under Pep Guardiola, so there's that bit of historical context to it. With that historical context to it, then with the promise of UEFA Champions League football, of course, we all know these players want to play in the UEFA Champions League, and perhaps I would want to presume that he was promised better wages by Chelsea as compared to Manchester United, who are trying to slice and dice their wage bill in as much as they can. So, with that said, with that in mind, that is when you get to see why he ended up choosing Chelsea over Manchester United. Quite a big blow to Manchester United's plans. But then I also do subscribe to the school of thought that this could be a blessing in disguise for Manchester United. Of course, that deal is pending a medical and a player the player signing contracts, which according to Fabrizio Romano will be done in the next 24 hours. Because he said Liam Delap will sign his Chelsea contract in the next 24 hours as Ipswich Town has authorized medical tests. Man City will get 30% of the deal as they had a sell-on clause included in the agreement with Ipswich, but the buyback clause was not activated. So, anyways, so I do think, for me particularly, this is a blessing in disguise for this Man United side. Why? They already have young strikers. When you look at the strikers that they already have, when you have Rasmus Højlund, when you look at Rasmus Højlund, he's what, only 22 years of age, and he's been at Man United for 2 seasons. He was signed quite expensively from, of course, from Atlanta for about, in a deal believed to be north of 72 million pounds. Only scored 4 goals this season in 32 appearances. Of course, not starting all of them. And then, in addition to Rasmus Højlund, they do have a player in Joshua Zirkzee. That's the Dutch international. Guys, please, do me the, kindly like the broadcast. Do me that absolute favor. Like the broadcast, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel and help us continue to grow our community. So, in as far as United are concerned, or they go, okay, you have Joshua Zirkzee, who just this month, just a week ago, turned 24 years of age. That's for the Dutch striker. Now, what does this tell you? You have a 22-year-old, you have a 24-year-old. Now, your intention is to add in another 22-year-old for striker who, again, does not have that much experience. I mean, he's only played 1 season in the Premier League. And yes, he scored his 12 goals, more than the 2 Manchester United strikers combined, possibly. So really, you find that quite interesting, because in the Premier League, Joshua Zirkzee made 32 appearances, scored 3 goals. Now, that means Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund scored a combined total of 7 goals in the Premier League. And yet, at Ipswich, Liam Delap scored 12 just by himself. Now, that is a statement of fact. That is statistically correct. But he does equally not have the experience. And playing for a team like Manchester United, to have all that responsibility on your shoulders, to be the talisman for a club the size of Man United, does not come as an easy task. It comes with a lot of expectations. It comes with a lot of pressure to it. And that's why you get to see that maybe that's partly why Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund are yet to deliver. So for me, I partly believe that United need an experienced striker from whom these two could learn from, if they are willing to keep them around for next season. Now, it goes without saying that there is already interest in Rasmus Højlund from Napoli, from Atlanta, from Juventus, from Inter Milan. They are all circling around. Then still, Italian clubs would want at least Joshua Zirkzee either to take him back on loan. So you have all that. So for me, I do think that Man United do need to sign a more experienced striker. Now, again, unfortunately for Man United and all the other clubs that want to sign strikers, there's not many of them on the market, especially the good ones. That is why Chelsea are already trying to sign Emmanuel Emega from Strasbourg. They want to sign him, and he stays there on a season-long loan because Strasbourg qualified for the UEFA Conference League next season, I think, with the 6th place finish on that French League 1 table. So, but they want to, sign him as fast as possible. Ipswich Town are trying to get Mark Gui from Chelsea on loan because they are losing Liam Delap. Now, again, with that said, that's why I think United need an experienced striker, only that there's not too many of them on the market. One of those that they did want to sign is Victor Gyökeres. Now, recent reports did indicate that United had pulled down their interest in Victor Gyökeres because it is speculated or reported that the player wants Champions League football, and United do not have that at the moment. So that is in its own docket. Now, they've joined Arsenal in the race for Benjamin Sesko. Whether they will succeed with that pursuit equally remains to be seen. And what's the advantage that Arsenal have over Man United going for a player like Benjamin Sesko is that Arsenal can promise you UEFA Champions League football, which United can't promise at the moment. History notwithstanding, So that's where it becomes a bit tricky. That's where it becomes a bit hard for Man United to get the right players at the moment, or even the perfect striker. But they will try to get a striker. They will be out in the market. I don't know. Again, maybe this is a bit difficult, but if I want Man United, I'd be looking at a player like Oli Watkins. He's 29 years of age, coming to 30. Get him, give him a 3-year contract. He has the experience. He's quite athletic. His interplay is good, holder play is good, and convince him to join, because he would want to leave Aston Villa, although he would want also to play for a team that has Champions League football. I mean, I would recommend him. I would recommend that Arsenal sign him as well as their second striker, beyond whoever their primary target currently is. Now, that would be my recommendation. So you would have a striker who is basically in their prime and also in the evening, approaching the evening of their career, to help, sort of show these youngsters the ropes and navigate the tricky Premier League kind of environment, seeing that Zax is still new after 1 season, and then Rasmus Højlund, just 2 seasons, a young player. Even when they signed him, I always thought he was going to be an understudy striker, and then he was sort of tossed into the deep end, and it didn't work out perfectly well for him. So there's that. So for me, that's the argument, that's the context that I would provide. But Chelsea are going to complete him. But, and then still speaking, Chelsea, reports do indicate that just because they complete the signing of Delap does not mean that they won't still be in the market for another striker, and they will continue to rival Liverpool for the signing of Hugo Ekitike. That's the 22-year-old French international at Eintracht Frankfurt. Scored, I think, 15 goals in the German Bundesliga this season and provided 8 assists, as far as I can remember. So really, really interesting. But let's wait and see what direction things take in as far as those pursuits go. Then away from Chelsea briefly, then let's go to Tottenham Hotspurs, where they have accelerated their interest in Crystal Palace captain Mark Gay. Now, Mark Gay is a defender at Crystal Palace who has attracted interest from the likes of Tottenham, from the likes of Newcastle, from the likes of Chelsea. United were reported remotely in those conversations. So all those clubs are interested in signing him. But now, Atletico Madrid want to sign Tottenham's Christian Romero. I think he still has about 2 years left to his contract. Now, because they want Christian Romero, Tottenham already needed a defender. But they are now looking at Mark Gay as a potential replacement for Christian Romero, should he end up at Atletico Madrid. So, speaking of Atletico Madrid, they are equally trying to sign Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis. That's the central midfielder at Real Betis. For those of you that did watch the Chelsea game, you must have seen that Spanish midfielder. So anyways, Tottenham are trying to pursue that path and see whether they can sign Mark Gay and beat the likes of Chelsea, beat the likes of Newcastle to his signature. Now, the advantage about this conversation is that Tottenham, Newcastle, and Chelsea, all involved in this kind of conversation, all have UEFA Champions League football to promise the England defender, which means it could boil down to wages. But Tottenham is also one of those teams that do really, really keep their discipline in terms of maintaining their wage bill to as low as possible. So maybe that's where Chelsea, with their big promises, could come in handy. Newcastle are paying well, especially when it comes to their, star signings. But when you sign for a team like Newcastle, you also do wonder, are you going to be able to break through that Dan Burn, Fabian Scheer, and Steven Botman kind of backline? Well, it is competition, but I think with Champions League on the cards next season, I think you would get the playing time. But let's wait and see where that heads. And then briefly to return back to Chelsea, Now, I found this quite interesting and did drop yesterday, I think, from Ben Jacobs. I think it was Ben Jacobs who did break the news. But briefly, let me first look at some of your comments before we proceed. Ashley says, I'm switching between two YouTube live, so it's kind of hard to keep switching between one live and another. And I'm in one of the lives, kind of. Okay. And then Ashley comes back to say, guess the animal. And unfortunately, those characters appeared a little too tiny for me to try and guess what that animal could be. But I don't know. It appears like a dog. It appears to be a dog. Anyways, I'm moving back, getting back on track on our conversation. Yes, I was saying that Ben Jacobs, yeah, I think it was Ben Jacobs of Kimi Sport that did, broke the news yesterday that Chelsea are considering keeping Jadon Sancho. Now, remember, Chelsea signed Jadon Sancho on a season-long loan with an obligation to buy for £25 million should they want to keep the player. As the season wore on, his performances sort of dipped. His form dipped. He wasn't delivering. He wasn't looking good, to be honest, midway the season and onwards. And there's all been speculation that Chelsea are considering returning him to Manchester United. However, for them to negate their obligation to buy for £25 million means they have to pay Manchester United £5 million in compensation. You get. Now, it looks like Chelsea are back on the table and are willing to keep Jadon Sancho at Chelsea. However, they have some requests to make. One is for the player to have his wages reduced because he was on very high wages when he signed for Manchester United from Borussia Dortmund. That was, I think, in 2021 when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was still at the club. So he was put on big wages and things have not worked out for him. Of course, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer then exited the club and then came Erik ten Hag, with whom they didn't get along really, ended up in a split. That is how he ended up at Chelsea on a season-long loan. Remember, last season, the last half of last season, he spent that at, I think, Borussia Dortmund on loan again. And he was quite good. He played good football there as Dortmund reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League and lost to Real Madrid. We cannot forget that. But essentially, he returned to the club and then he was loaned out to Chelsea because they had had a falling with Erik ten Hag. Erik ten Hag requested that the player apologizes and they move on. He refused because he said he had done nothing wrong. And for those of you that forget, I think Man United lost to Tottenham Hotspur. And then in his post-match press conference, while speaking to the media, Erik ten Hag sort of alluded, among other things, as the reasons why they lost, that players are not putting in the shift like Jadon Sancho, and Jadon Sancho had not played in that game. Now, having not played that game, he was catching straight bullets because the manager deflected to say he does not train well and that kind of thing. And I was like, what on God's green earth are you thinking? You're talking like that about an English player who did not even feature in the game. And I didn't see no beautiful ending, especially for Erik ten Hag. No wonder he was eventually sacked. But that notwithstanding, Chelsea are now willing to come back to the negotiating table and look to keep Jadon Sancho because they've sort of been impressed with his performances at the tail end of the season. And he did also score in the final in the Conference League. So Ben Jacobs says Chelsea are in talks with Jadon Sancho over a new deal that would see them trigger an obligation to buy from Man United for up to £25 million. Club preference is for Sancho to stay and adjust his wage to fit within Chelsea's incentive-driven structure. Now, and then discussions do not yet guarantee Sancho will remain, but reveal a willingness to find a solution. Should terms not be agreed, Chelsea will pay a £5 million penalty fee for returning Sancho to Manchester United. basically just as I explained it. Now, when he says Chelsea's incentive-driven structure is, I think because Chelsea put many of these players on very long-term contracts, they tend to offer a base salary, and then there are other bonuses or incentives in there to say, if we qualify for UEFA Champions League, you get this bonus. If you win a trophy, you get that kind of bonus, like that kind of grading. It's also does exist with all other teams. To say, if you win the league title, you'll get this kind of bonus. If you win the Champions League, you get that. If we qualify, if let's say in the Champions League, they say, if we qualify out of the group stages of the UEFA Champions League, even in that new league table format, we all know that teams are putting pots of 4-4. So in four pots, with each having 9 teams. So if we, let's say, finish within the top 8, you get these kinds of bonuses. If we finish between 9th and 24th, that means we have a playoff play. You get this kind of bonus. So for every stage we reach, maybe in the UEFA Champions League, you get this kind of bonus. In the FA Cup, maybe if we reach the final, if we win it, this is what you get. So those kinds of incentives are usually players' contracts, among other things. So, and then the other example is, for example, Bruno Fernandes, who is being promised that Al Hilal are willing to pay him up to £200 million over a period of 3 years. Now, over a period of 3 years, that's an average of about what? £75 million per season. But it doesn't mean that he gets paid a lump sum of £75 million every season. What is guaranteed is £700,000 as weekly wages, that is without taxes, and then there are bonuses. If you score 10 goals in the season, if you provide 10 assists in the same season, this is what you get as a bonus. If we qualify for this kind of competition, if we win the league title, if we win the Asian, kind of Champions League, that side, those kinds of bonuses. So they do exist in player contracts, and that's why Chelsea are discussing that. So, like Ben Jacob says, nothing is agreed yet. It remains to be seen whether they will come to an agreement, because there has to be a willingness, especially from Jadon Sancho's side, to allow his wages to be deducted. I do not remember exactly how much he was earning, but I know it was north of £200,000 on a weekly basis at Manchester United. So I think Chelsea would want to bring that a bit down in what they would think is manageable. Then we do have some breaking news. This is regarding Liverpool, because they have, according to Fabrizio Romano, the deal is sealed. Jeremy Frimpong deal, all signed and sealed with official announcement now imminent. Liverpool have their new right back for €35 million. That's Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen. We've spoken about him widely, extensively on this channel. Mariam Omoto could be a witness, and Amlin will be witnesses, because those are Liverpool fans. This is the player we've spoken about at great length. And then Man City's initial bid for Tijan Reinders has been received by AC Milan in the recent hours. Proposal worth around €60 million, including add-ons. AC Milan want more to let the midfielder leave. Negotiations are advancing. Now, Man City are trying to really push hard for Tijan Reinders, because they want him to be part of their squad that goes for the FIFA Club World Cup that kicks off on the 15th of June until the 13th of July there in the United States of America. We'll wait to see how that deal also progresses from on that end. We'll be sure to keep tabs on it. So keep it on the YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and you'll get the best of that news. And then, of course, Trent Alexander-Arnold draws closer and closer to joining Real Madrid. We're just waiting for an announcement with that respect. Then, of course, yesterday we spoke about Angelo Di Maria, who left Benfica at the end of his contract this season, and he has signed for Rosario Central back in Argentina, so back where it all began in his home country. And then yesterday we also did receive news that Arsenal had formally part ways with a Brazilian star, Marquinhos. Now, many of you do not remember Arsenal signed Marquinhos. It didn't work out, not even one bit. It didn't work out. They sent him out on loan to Norwich. He went on loan in France, eventually back in Brazil. It just did not work out. It was a bad signing. And that is when we got to learn that it had been recommended that Arsenal sign Kivica Kvaratskhelia before he joined Napoli, and they declined and went for Marquinhos, and it did not work out. But anyways, usually signing these players is a huge gamble. It's a gamble that clubs take. They sort of bet on themselves that sign this player. It will work out, and this is what he'll be able to deliver. And maybe usually for young players, they will go a bit, and we can, sell them for bigger amounts. We can sit here and talk about signings that did not work out. You remember Alexis Sanchez to Man United? That didn't really work out. You remember Paul Pogba returning to Juventus? That did not work out. You remember Romelu Lukaku returning to Chelsea from Inter Milan, signed expensively? That did not work out. Albert Sambi-Lokonga to Arsenal has not worked out. Nuno Tavares to Arsenal didn't work out, although debatable. Fabio Vieira to Arsenal did not work out. Man United, we can speak all day about that. Jadon Sancho, Rasmus Højlund, Joshua Zirkzee, they've all appeared not to have worked out. What looks to have worked out is Bruno Fernandes coming in. Christian Eriksen with his age, you can say he's delivered something. Rafael Varane, that's debatable. Casemiro, it's 50-50. You look at Lenny Yoro, that one I think it's working out. Alessandro Martinez, I think it has worked out despite him, suffering so many injuries. Matthias de Ligt, I think that will work out. Patrick Togu, I think that will work out. Aiden Heaven, I think that will work out. Andre Onana, I do not think it has worked out the way they had hoped it would. So really, when you look around, you go to Chelsea, there's a whole lot of those. Mukalo Mudryk, who is currently under provisional suspension for anti-doping, while being subjected to anti-doping, breaches. So that has not worked out. When you look at some of those players, like Axel Disasi, at some point they signed Malangasa. It didn't work out. So really, it becomes a bit. It is a bit tricky. So clubs do take a gamble on signing these players and pay quite expensively for them, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it just doesn't. So Jack Grealish to Man City, I do not think it really worked out. For a player who they signed for £100 million, because you had his best season came in 2022-2023 as Man City, won the treble. But this season he's made what? Less than 7 appearances in the Premier League for Man City. He's never provided more than 6 assists in the Premier League season at Man City. So really, for me, on a larger scale, in the larger context of things, that's usually what it is, and it did not work out for Marquinhos at Arsenal. Of course, Napoli's next priority after Antonio Conte's decision to stay with the club is sealing the deal for Kevin De Bruyne. That's the free agent for Man City, Kevin De Bruyne. We've spoken about that. Then they will look to see the deal for Jonathan David, another free agent. Then they will try to perhaps return to Man United and see if they can get a deal for Alejandro Garnacho. We'll keep our eyes on that and see where the deal goes. And then, so yes, that's about it in as far as those speculations is concerned. Now, yes, I promised you I would speak about Matthias Cunha moving to Manchester United. Yesterday, I did receive some messages in my inbox asking about Matthias Cunha. Now, what is happening with Matthias Cunha is everything is almost as good as done. But what Man United are trying to delay is completing the move within this calendar year. Within this calendar year. I can see we have a comment from Ahmad Spetter. Ahmad Spetter. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. Apologies if I've mispronounced it. Says Liam Delap to Chelsea. Here we go. Liam Delap, here we go to Chelsea. Yes, we've spoken about that deal at great length. But Ahmad, while you're here, kindly do me the absolute favor and like the broadcast, but also seeing that you're here for the first time, also do me the favor and subscribe to the channel. I really, really appreciate your love and support. But thank you for being here with us. But also do let me know what team you support and where you're joining us from, if it's not too much to ask, sir. Anyways, so the deal about Matthias Cunha to Man United, everything is as good as done. Now, what United are trying to do is push the completion of the deal to July. And this is why, because they want to record that transaction or to pay that first installment to Wolverhampton Wanderers and write it on the books of a new year, of a new financial year, which will be July and onwards. Don't worry, my brother, I already subscribed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ahmad. So, so that's what Man United are basically trying to do. They're simply trying to work the math within their books to say, you remember, they've made a good amount of losses over the last scope of 3 years, believed to be in the region of 300 million pounds, to be exact, according to some reports. That's, I think, according to the BBC Sport. Now, because of that, and they want to stay on the good side of the profit and sustainability rules of the Premier League, then it means that they have to trade carefully. They have to manage their books carefully. And that's why Ben Jacobs did tell us that all on track with Matthias Cunha's move to Man United, regardless of when the deal is announced. Cunha's contract may not start until July the 1st to allow United to place the first installment on the next financial year. Cunha waiting on a visa before undergoing his Manchester United medical. So that's what he clarifies on that deal. I can see, is this Americ? Americ says, "Hala Madrid." Hi, Americ. Good to have you on the channel, on the broadcast. Welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Good to have you here. I would be interested in knowing where you're joining us from, and by what you say, "Hala Madrid," I'll take it as a given that you are a Real Madrid fan with that submission. Indeed, Hala Madrid. Madrid are going to be playing in the FIFA Club World Cup, and Florentino Perez is reported to have some form of obsession with the tournament. He says he wants Real Madrid to be the first team that wins it under this new format. Then I can see Americ says UEFA Champions League. I think he's asking about the UEFA Champions League. Then Ahmad says, the rumor says Arsenal is advancing talks with Gyökeres. Now, again, about Victor Gyökeres and Arsenal and Benjamin Sesko, again, I'll give you a bit of historical context to Arsenal's situation when it comes to strikers. We all know Arsenal needs a striker. They've known that since last summer, before the start of last season, and yet they couldn't pull off a deal. So, but on their priority list was Alexander Isak. That was number one, first on the list. Number two on that list, from what we get, is Benjamin Sesko, and then more recently, number three on that list is Victor Gyökeres, and then number four is Hugo Ekitike on that list for potential strikers. Don't rule out Oli Watkins, even though he was only offered to them in January. Now, so those are the kinds of players they've been looking at. When Andrea Bata walks in as the new sporting director, reports suggest that he made his inquiries around the potential deal for Alexander Isak, and they told him that one is quite difficult. One, Newcastle have since qualified for UEFA Champions League football. That's why clubs like Liverpool and Arsenal were waiting to see if Newcastle do not qualify for Champions League football. Maybe it would have given them a bargaining sort of power to go to Newcastle and to go to the player and say, look, we can promise you UEFA Champions League football, and we're going to pay you good wages and that kind of thing, and try and force a move away from Newcastle. But now Newcastle have UEFA Champions League, so definitely they're not going to let go of their number one striker unless the player wants to move, which would be okay or not impossible to think about. If the player wants then to move and the club are then willing to sell, which they are not willing to sell because he's still under contract until June 2028, that's for the next 3 years. That means it will be a deal too expensive. So then Arsenal moved on to their number 2, 3 options. And since then, they've held conversations with Victor Gyökeres's camp as well as that of Benjamin Sesko. Like we spoke last night, for those of you that were with us, that Arsenal had started concrete talks with Benjamin Sesko's camp. Now, those concrete talks did just start yesterday. That was reported as far back as 6th May, I think, by Florian Plettenberg, who did reveal those reports that Arsenal had started, concrete talks over a potential, over the move for Victor Gyökeres. Sorry, it was as back as 23rd May. Yes, 23rd, not 6th May. So they started making those attempts. But while they are making those attempts, they've also spoken to agents or representatives of Victor Gyökeres. So why? Because they know both deals are going to be expensive. They're going to be too hard to pull off. But the priority is Benjamin Sesko. That is from what I gather. Now, you speak to both sides, and if you get the green light on Benjamin Sesko, you sign Benjamin Sesko because he's now your priority. If things fail with Benjamin Sesko, then you have a straight backup in Victor Gyökeres and then make that deal happen. And then you have yourself a striker. So basically, they're just trying, they're not trying, what they're trying to do is not to have all their eggs in one basket. That's basically what's happening with that deal. You come back to say, ain't no way Arsenal will pay Isak, bro, he's too expensive. Again, I couldn't agree more with you, Ahmad. He's too expensive. If any team wants to get Alexander Isak out of Newcastle, it would cost them no less than 120 to 150 million pounds, which would be a British record transfer fee. You get so, and when you have even when you have a budget of up to 300 million pounds to spend on players, are you really willing to spend 150 million pounds or 120 of that on a single player? Maybe yes, you would be willing to take that risk, but remember Arsenal trying to sign Martin Zubimendi. That is going to cost them about 51 million pounds. They want to sign a right winger. So really, it's a bit tricky. And that's why you see that Man United and Chelsea are trying to really sign Liam Delap, because he's a good striker, still a young striker, but also he was coming slightly cheap as compared to all these other names that you could read about in as far as the transfer market is concerned, because he's only 30 million pounds costing. Try and go to Aston Villa to sign a 29-year-old Ollie Watkins. When they offered him to Arsenal in January, they wanted 60 million pounds. Arsenal valued the player at about 40 million pounds. So you can see the gap in valuation. Yesterday, again, we were reading about reports that RB Leipzig want a fee in the region of 92.5 million pounds for Benjamin Sesko, only 21 years of age, for the Slovenian international. By the way, scored only 13 goals this season in the German Bundesliga and provided 5 assists. That notwithstanding, then you also have a deal for Victor Gyökeres, who could cost about 58 million pounds. That is in the field of about 60 to 65 million euros. Now, while that deal sounds cheaper, I've seen a lot of conversation around that. Arsenal fans wondering why they're not going for the much doable option, the much cheaper option. Now, the Victor Gyökeres deal is not that cheap as we may think. Why? His release clause, according to reports, was 100 million euros. But due to the circumstances that have since changed, Sporting Lisbon are willing to let him go for a fee of about 70 million euros. But there's also agents' fees. Now, agents' fees are equally high. And then there's the players' wages, which are equally high. And then maybe a signing bonus. So that deal in itself also takes you back to a fee of about 100 million euros or slightly plus. So both deals are equally expensive. It is just a question of priority who Arsenal want to zero down to in terms of signing, in as far as the transfer window is concerned. So that's what I can inform you about Arsenal's pursuit for a striker between Victor Gyökeres and Benjamin Sesko. Then Ahmed says Sesko and Gyökeres would be perfect for Arsenal, even though Chelsea fan. Again, that's a good submission, Ahmed. Good to know that you're following conversations beyond your own team in Chelsea. Now, again, this is what I'll say. While Arsenal are pursuing those, remember, Arsenal is not the only team that is interested in signing these players. Chelsea is in the mix of that conversation. Liverpool is in the mix of that conversation. Although their priority is with Hugo Ekitike and then Benjamin Sesko, those two. That's for the side of Liverpool. Chelsea are in the mix for all, although they seem to be tilting towards Hugo Ekitike, who, according to Frankfurt sources, will cost no less than 100 million euros. So again, it will be for clubs to decide where they place their money at. And by the way, Hugo Ekitike, when you look at his numbers, they're better than that of Benjamin Sesko, because for him he scored 15 goals and I think provided 8 assists in the German Bundesliga last season. So, and his overall involvement in about 48 games this season has been about 34 plus or 38, thereabout. So that's across all competitions. So he's really, really a good striker. So it will boil down to that, to the decisions of the clubs. And then you come back to say, I think Gyökeres would never wanted to be number 2 striker in the club. I do not think if he joined Arsenal or for starters, I do not think that Arsenal would sign both Gyökeres and Sesko because it would be too expensive. Neither do I think that Chelsea would be able to go and sign 2 more strikers, let's say Gyökeres and Sesko or Ekitike. I do not think that's plausible or financially viable for them. But you cannot rule out anything with Chelsea. They are mad in the transfer market. They go and do anything. Peter Parker is back with us. He says, "What's up, champ? Good to have you back on the broadcast, Peter Parker. We did miss you yesterday, but it's good to have you back." Anyways, so that's nothing. And then, while I subscribe to the school of argument that Arsenal need more than just one striker, Chelsea need more than just one striker. Chelsea already have a striker. By the time they're going for all these strikers, they have Nicholas Jackson. You're getting Delap, but you're also remaining in the conversation of either Ekitike, Gyökeres, or Sesko. So they want options in that front line. But it is true that Sesko wouldn't want to be a number 2 striker to anyone. But again, I think it is clubs trying to manage their risk. One, you do not want to go all out and have one striker, and what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? Because it can happen that you buy a player and it does not work out. It can happen that you buy a player and a very good one, by the way, and it does not work out. There's a striker that joined Chelsea a couple of years back. He came from Germany. Was it Claudio Pizarro? I seem to forget. But before we even speak of that, you do remember Chelsea signing Fernando Torres. When he left Liverpool for £50 million, I remember it was a January transfer window, and joined Chelsea. He was a very good striker then at Liverpool. But the kind of delivery he had at Chelsea was not the equivalent to what he had done at Liverpool. But of course, he's mainly remembered for his goal against, I think, Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League, which saw Chelsea advance to the finals of the 2012 finals. But you remember yes, I think it was Claudio Pizarro, when he came to Chelsea. I stand to be corrected, but I seem to remember Claudio Pizarro playing coming to Chelsea, and then it did not work out. He went back to Germany. Yes, in 2007. In 2007, he joined Chelsea from Bayern Munich, and he had scored so many goals. But he came to Chelsea, spent there 2 years, played 21 games, and only scored 2 goals. Only 2 goals. And that failed. He was then loaned back. Actually, I think he spent 1 season at Chelsea. He was loaned back. He was loaned to Werder Bremen for the season of 2008-2009. And in 26 appearances, he scored 17 goals. So, and then that is when Werder Bremen bought him on a permanent deal, made 77 appearances, scored 43 goals. You get it? So then that deal was a success. And guess what? After 3 years at Werder Bremen, Bayern Munich bought him back. And then after Bayern Munich, spending 3 years at Bayern Munich, he returned back to Werder Bremen. So he oscillated between those clubs mainly until he retired, until he left them in 2020. So again, I think it's about clubs sort of trying to de-risk their options when it comes to assigning these players, that you do not want to find yourself in a situation where you're short on numbers, or you really invested largely in a striker who you believe is good, has all the qualities, ticks all the boxes, but then it doesn't work out, because that is also a possibility. Let's face that. So that whether Gyökeres would want to be number 2 on wouldn't want to be it, that is out of question. But just imagine, let's say you're Arsenal or you're Chelsea, in the less ideal world, let's say you get rid of Nicholas Jackson and then do not sign Liam Delap and then say, let's buy Gyökeres, is the one we will rely on solely. It just doesn't work that way. Look at that prime Chelsea side. They had Didier Drogba, they had Nicolas Anelka, they had Simon Kalu in that team. Remember 2009, 2010, when they were winning the Premier League title under Carlo Ancelotti? They had so many good players, so many good players. Go back to Man United, they never had one striker. They always had more than one good striker at a time. You had Wayne Rooney, and yet you had Javier Hernandez, Balcazar, Kikarito in there in the ranks to add on to those goals. And then once in a while, you'd pull a stroke of a Federico Macheda to come and do the things to get the job done for you. So whether Gyökeres would want to be number 2 or not, I think any team that signs Gyökeres, Benjamin Sesko, Hugo Ekitike, all these players would want to be like what brought Erling Haaland is to Man City, or what Mbappe is to Real Madrid, or what Robert Lewandowski is to Barcelona, what Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram are to Inter Milan. They all want to be the target man. They all want to be that number 1 man. Yes, that is what they want. But those big clubs always need options. They always need options. That's what at Barcelona, you also have the likes of Ferran Torres in there. Anyways, I think you come back to say, this is Ahmad again, Ahmad Septa. He says, I think Gyökeres would never want to be number 2. I think we've discussed that at great length. Isak is 150 million pounds. That's crazy. Indeed, it is crazy. But I mean, we are in the world where transfer fees are crazy. Look at what Chelsea are paying, what Chelsea paid for Enzo Fernandez. Look at what they paid for Moises Caicedo. Look at what they paid for Makalo Modric. Look at what Arsenal paid for Declan Rice. Look at what Man City paid for Jack Grealish. You look at what Chelsea again paid for Romelu Lukaku to bring him back from Inter Milan. You look at those transfer fees, and you look a couple of years back. You look at what PSG paid for Neymar, 220 million euros, quite expensively. You look at what they paid Monaco for Kylian Mbappe, because he first joined them on a season-long loan with an option to buy. The fee was north of 50 million pounds for Mbappe for Monaco. So transfer fees have gone crazy, and they will continue to go crazy. Then there's that English tax, especially for teams when they are buying English players. For me, Declan Rice, as good as a player he was, Jack Grealish, as good as a player he was at the time, 100 million pounds? No, that's too much money. Maybe 80 million pounds. Now, for context, just rewind it back to, I think, 2009, when Cristiano Ronaldo was joining Real Madrid. He cost 80 million pounds. And that, at the time, we thought that was crazy. A couple of years later, they were buying Gareth Bale for 85 million pounds. You get? So, yeah, when it comes to player prices, they'll keep going up. They'll keep going up and up. And that's why, in the end, and Arsene Wenger talked about this a couple of years back, and he said, increasingly we will see players running down their contracts and want to live for free. Real Madrid have been trying to deploy that tactic. They look at players whose contracts are about to expire and start quoting them, because usually when a player has only 1 year left to their contract, they'll buy him. Is likely to be let go over at a very, very cheap rate as compared to what he would have gone for if they were still under a 3-year contract or 4 years left to their contract. So that's how they are going to get Alexander Trent-Arnold. Look at what they did with Mbappe. Although they were disappointed in the first place, they are willing to pay a fee in the region of 100 million euros plus to get Kylian Mbappe. He chose to stay, and Real Madrid waited basically, and they got him for free, and they gave him loads of money as sign-on fees. So those kinds of things, they are bound to happen. If you remember the fee that United joined, Cristiano rejoined Man United for about what, 12 million pounds to Juventus. Federico Chiesa joined Liverpool for 12 million pounds. Thereabout. When you look at Federico Chiesa, immediately after the Euros 2020 that were played in 2021, he would have commanded a much bigger fee than that. So that's the revolving context around transfer fees when it comes to these players. So I'm Rick. Asked about the UEFA Champions League. Can we speak about that briefly? Our time is fast spent. We are 1 hour and 11 minutes into this live broadcast. But like I promised, the UEFA Champions League is something we're going to speak about in tonight's broadcast. In the night, we'll have a broadcast at possibly, if nothing disrupts us, it will start at about 10 p.m. East African time. That's for that. And then even tomorrow morning, between 11 and midday, we'll have another broadcast still continue to speak about the UEFA Champions League final. So, but for now, I wanted us to sort of concentrate on the updates in as far as, the transfer window is concerned. Manchester United, the conversation of Bruno Fernandes to Al Hilal is not going away. Now, well, the player would love to stay at Man United. Man United do not want to sell the player, but he has not said no to a contract offer from Al Hilal. Now, that is why sometime this week, they gave him a 72-hour ultimatum for him to decide whether he would like to stay, whether he would like to join them or not. They put their offer on the table. They are waiting for the player to say yes or no. And that is a fact. So, again, it is up to him to decide. So that's a revolving situation. Anyways, here's some of the other transfer gossip that is making the rounds or the rumors. Liverpool's Luis Diaz, we've spoken about him. We did even last night. Saudi Pro League side, Al Nassr are interested. Al Nassr trying to renew Cristiano Ronaldo's contract because it does expire at the end of next month. Now, there are reports that Al Nassr want to extend his contract, but also there is potentially a possibility that Cristiano Ronaldo is loaned out to Al Hilal for a short-term contract so that he plays in the FIFA Club World Cup. Again, we did have that conversation last night. And then Botafogo is the other Brazilian side that is being linked with a potential move to try and play in the FIFA Club World Cup. So we'll keep our eyes on that situation and see. But Al Nassr are monitoring the situation around the Luis Diaz's contract at Liverpool. He still has 2 years left to his contract, and the club are yet to engage him on contract renewal. Then in the German Bundesliga, this is according to SZ in Germany. They said Bundesliga giants Bayern Munich are still confident of persuading Bayer Leverkusen attacker Florian Wirtz to join them in the summer, and not Liverpool. I don't want to say the story doesn't have credibility, but it's not impossible, but chances of it happening as very minimal because all the information we have is that he said not to Bayern Munich and he said yes to Liverpool, and Liverpool are continuing with negotiations with Bayer Leverkusen over a transfer fee. Then we've spoken about Jadon Sancho. Then Brentford are in talks with Liverpool over a deal to sign the 26-year-old Ireland goalkeeper. That's Kaumain Kelleher. And we spoke about Kelleher because Bayer Leverkusen are trying to sign Mark Flecken. Peter Parker says Chelsea, what a dominant second half. Yeah, very, they were quite dominant in that second half in the finals of the UEFA Conference League. Even in the first half, they dominated possession, although going forward, they did fall short on that. Malo Gusto struggled in that game. He had to invert into midfield. It wasn't really working out well for him, and that's why the recommendation was at halftime they swapped in for Rete James, which Ezomareska had seen what we had all seen, and he made that substitution, and Chelsea went on to be unstoppable. Then pulled out Pedro Neto, who equally was struggling through the game, for Jadon Sancho. Really made the necessary changes. I pulled out Benoit Badiashile and brought in Levi Colwill. So eventually it worked out perfectly well. Then Napoli are closing in on agreeing personal terms with Lille's 25-year-old Canadian forward, Jonathan David. We've spoken about him extensively, who has also been contacted by Juventus. Then Chelsea have joined Juventus in making a formal inquiry with Sporting Lisbon over the availability of 26-year-old Sweden striker Victor Gyökeres, who is also wanted by Arsenal. Again, we've spoken about that extensively. I just didn't know that Juventus had come in the mix for the striker. By the way, Juventus are also willing to let go of Dusan Vlahovic, although nobody's talking about him, and that sort of surprises me a bit. Guys, what do you think about Dusan Vlahovic? I know he said no to Arsenal a couple of seasons ago when he was still at Fiorentina and chose Juventus, but the two have since sort of had a falling out of some sort, especially at the tail end of Massimiliano Allegri's stint with the club, and eventually Thiago Motta's stint. And yeah, Peter Parker says Chelsea are the history makers. Yeah, they've won all UEFA competitions, two UEFA Champions League titles, 2012-2021, two UEFA Europa League titles, 2013 and 2019, and then now the UEFA Conference League. Of course, in there they also have the UEFA Super Cup, which they won in 2021, and I think back in 98 or 89, something like that. But anyways, so yeah, Chelsea history makers. Bro, why Barcelona not in the FIFA World Cup? Now, again, I wouldn't lie to you about the whole criteria through which they went to choose those that are participating in the FIFA Club World Cup. But they did also consider those that have won the competition recently, or how well they've performed in the competition. And you know that Barcelona had last won the competition, I think, back in 2015. And then, of course, Atletico Madrid have not won it either in that period, and yet they will be representing. So the overall criteria for the FIFA Club World Cup is one that left a lot to be desired in regards to what the selection criteria was, or for most people, because when you look at excuse me, when you look at the way teams were handpicked, in a sense, because Chelsea are in it, I do understand they won it in 2021. Man City won it in 2023, so I do understand. Inter Milan have been in two finals. This year they are playing their second final in the last 3 years. When you look at apologies. Just confirming something. Just confirming something. Yes, when you look at some of those teams that are there, you can't help it wonder, because, like I said, Atletico Madrid have never won it, and yet they're there. Of course, they've not done too bad, but let's not forget that in 2018 they were in the Europa League. Never mind that they won it. PSG have never won it, but they played 4 semi-finals in the last 6 years. So maybe that was the other criteria. Bayern Munich won it in 2020. Dortmund were losing finalists in last season's final. Juventus have not won it. I don't know how many years. Their last final was in 2017 when they lost to Real Madrid by 4-1. I mean, I really can't tell you what the criteria were and why Barcelona are not in it and that kind of thing. That was all up to FIFA, all the decisions that they made. Who will be the coach for Real Madrid in the Club World Cup? It's going to be Xabi Alonso. He was already unveiled at the club, and yeah, he did start his duties as the new head coach for Real Madrid. And then Carlo Ancelotti moved to the Brazil national team, so he's also going to be handling affairs on that side. And then at Bayer Leverkusen, they replaced Xabi Alonso with a former Manchester United manager, Eric Ten Hag. So he did sign a 2-year contract. Then in Italy, Carlo Ancelotti, Antonio Conte is staying with Napoli. Massimiliano Allegri is joining AC Milan to replace Sergio Conceição. Gian Piero Gasperini has left Atlanta after 9 years and is going to be replaced potentially by Stefano Pioli. For those of you that do remember, Stefano Pioli was the manager at AC Milan, I think, when they were winning the Scudetto in 2022. Yes. So, and then was it 2022? Because Napoli won 2023. Yes, at 2022. And then at AC Roma, they are looking to appoint Gian Piero Gasperini, who's just left Atlanta. So that's what is happening down there in terms of the managerial changes that are happening in that site. So I hope that answers your questions, Peter, in that regard. But briefly, still on the transfer speculation, Juventus are also interested in signing Endrick. That's the 18-year-old Brazilian. They want him on loan. They're considering him. Carlo Ancelotti was asked why Endrick was not summoned to the Brazil national team. And he made a sarcastic comment or response. He said, because he doesn't play at his club. Guess what his club is? Real Madrid. What's the head coach for Real Madrid? Carlo Ancelotti, the entire season. So he said he doesn't play for his club. Anyway, the irony. Former Juventus manager, anyway, we're talking about Massimiliano Allegri, only 57 years of age. By the way, this is his second spell at San Siro with AC Milan, because he spent 4 years with them between 2010 and 2014. That was about the same time when Antonio Conte was at Juventus. Yes, and then Ipswich have offered Chelsea's 19-year-old Spanish forward Marc Gui a loan deal. We've spoken about Marc Gui. We spoke about Marc Gui last evening. Yes, so Ipswich want to sign Marc Gui on a season-long loan from Chelsea as their number one replacement for Liam Delap on the interim. You say this is Adieri Kangumba. Adieri Kangumba says, "Hi Peter, how are you? Newcastle? How are you? Newcastle United should sign McKay, Brani Mbeumo, and Kobel and Gittens, Garcia and Jonathan David and Delap signed for Newcastle." Wow, Adieri Kangumba. I think I'm seeing you here for the first time, Adil. Please consider liking the broadcast and also subscribing to the channel, seeing that you're new here. But I don't know whether your message was really meant for Peter or it was meant particularly for me. Just to update you, my name is Robert K. Sarkoz. So, anyways, I do understand this being sort of the dream wish list for Newcastle to sign. They are interested in signing Brani Mbeumo. Yes, they are interested in signing McKay, although, like I've told you, that Tottenham are trying to accelerate the move for McKay from Crystal Palace because they're also interested in signing a centre back. Chelsea are also interested in his services, but on the list of potential centre backs, they also have Gerard Braithwaite from Everton. Of course, we all know they lost out on Dean Howson, who is joining Real Madrid. So you mentioned Jonathan David. Jonathan David is advancing talks with Napoli to join them after leaving Lille as a free agent. Yes, Newcastle are in the market for a striker. They did want to sign Liam Delap, but we all know now he has chosen Chelsea. they were in talks to extend Calm Hudson, although Calm Wilson's contract, to have that contract renewed. They do have an option to extend for a further year in his contract, but they're not going to exercise that. According to reports, they are looking to instead negotiate a totally new contract that is sort of an incentive-based contract or performance-based contract. Excuse me. So that is the discussion being had at Newcastle. Then among them, you say Gittens. Yes, Jamie Gittens from Borussia Dortmund, a very, very young, good player in Jamie Gittens, has attracted a lot of interest from multiple clubs, including Arsenal as well as Chelsea, all been linked with a move for Jamie Gittens. At Borussia Dortmund, only 20 years of age. That's for the English winger. 8 goals this season in the German Bundesliga with 3 assists and 32 appearances. When you look at him overall, of course, he's still a young player, gets so many decisions wrong, especially in the final third, but he can be bettered. He can be polished up really. Oh, my voice is not sounding well. Guys, let me know. If not, perhaps I need to sort out my microphone. How is it now, Peter, or anybody else listening? How is my voice now? I wouldn't want to continue. Okay. I think the other microphone was running out of battery. That's why. Anyways, like I was saying, Jamie Gittens, still a young player, gets some decisions wrong, especially in the final third. But overall, he's a good player. I think he can be improved. Would be a good addition for Newcastle if they were able to get him. I know they are in the market to search for a winger. They want a centre back. They could lose Tino Livramento, that's the right back, to Man City. Man City are interested in services. They also want to sign Ryan Archnori, that's Man City. They want to sign him from Wolverhampton Wanderers. So then also in this conversation, you add on Liam Delap. Liam Delap is now out of the question, so they will have to look elsewhere for another striker. I do not know. I don't know why are teams not considering signing Joan Felipe Mateta. Maybe he wouldn't want to be number 2 to Alexander Isak, but Joan Felipe Mateta with 13 Premier League goals this season. Why is nobody speaking about Gerard Bowen at West Ham United? I think he's a good player. There's a very, very good player in there. Yeah, he's had a 20-goal contribution this season, 13 goals and 7 assists. Thereabout. Then, so yeah, Liam Delap is out of the question. Jonathan David possibly out of the question. Garcia, when you say Garcia, I don't know what Garcia you're referring to. I didn't get that one really well. That's Adieri Kangumba. I didn't get that one really. Please indulge me. And then who else did you speak about? Brani Mbeumo. Yes, Newcastle are interested, but Man United are also interested in the 25-year-old Cameroon international. Scored 20 Premier League goals in the just concluded season and provided 7 assists. That's an overall goal contribution of 27. Clearly making Brentford fans forget about Ivan Toney, who has had a brilliant season in the Saudi Pro League. Yohan Wissa scored 18 or 19 goals. Quite interesting really in regards to what the season has been like. Then okay, I think I've answered Adiel Kangumba's submission. I've responded to that at great length. Then Kobel. Who is Kobel? Kobel. I don't get that one. Oh, Greg Kobel. You mean the Borussia Dortmund goalkeeper? I mean, he's 27. Newcastle have Nick Pope. Nick Pope is a very good goalkeeper. And in their ranks, they also have Martin Dubravka. So I do not know whether Newcastle are out in the market in search for a goalkeeper. I do not think so. Maybe it's just not priority. But yeah, Newcastle are going to be revamping their squad because next season they're going to be in the UEFA Champions League. Abdul Abdul Al Abdul Aziz Al Abdallah is here back with us, a Real Madrid fan there. Abdallah, good to have you back. Good to have you. Welcome to the broadcast. Do me the absolute usual favor of liking the broadcast, but it's a pleasure to have you back, sir. You say hi. Then you say Peter asked about Barcelona is now seriously considering a 27-year-old Marcus Rashford. Yes, Barcelona are considering two players for their wing demands or their wing forwards. They are looking at Marcus Rashford and Luis Diaz of Liverpool. That's the 28-year Colombian international. Now, they've held conversations with Marcus Rashford's representatives. The reports do have it that Marcus Rashford would be willing to take a pay cut to sort of reduce on his wages because he was receiving over £300,000 per week at Man United, and when he joined Aston Villa on loan, the argument was that Aston Villa would cover at least 75% of his wages and United cover the rest. So anyways, he is willing to sort of take that a notch down to complete a dream move to Barcelona. But Man United want £40 million, nothing more, nothing less, for Marcus Rashford, according to reports. Now, whether Barcelona are willing to pay that fee remains to be seen, but they really are interested in the 27-year-old Marcus Rashford. Then, of course, they spoke about Luis Diaz. Like I said, Luis Diaz has 2 years left to his current contract. Liverpool are open to listening to offers to any club that may want him, provided that they are paying good money. And then let's keep an eye out on Cody Gakpo. Bayern Munich are interested, but they are also interested in Kaoru Mitoma and Rafael Leao. So for their wing, position. The reports I do not want to hear about is Leroy Sané to Arsenal. That one, I don't want to hear anything about it. And on that, I'm specifically speaking as an Arsenal fan, please. Guys, indulge me on that one. I do not want Leroy Sané to Arsenal, simply because I'm tired of players who are peripherals, players that are in the evenings of their careers, making the move to Arsenal. And I mean, we've burnt our fingers with those moves. Look at Raheem Sterling this season on loan. It did not work out. Look at William Borges Silva from Chelsea to Arsenal. It didn't work out. David Luiz, yes, he wasn't that bad. That was a 50-50. But I'm tired of those kinds of profiles signings. Really, I don't want to hear it. Kim Armstrong, no. Leroy Sané, no. Let him go to Galatasaray. Let him stay with Bayern Munich. I couldn't give a rat's ass. And then, okay, back to proceed. Let's see. Okay. Abdallah will respond to him. He says, UEFA Champions League final tomorrow night. Yes, the UEFA Champions League final is on tomorrow night, and we will be speaking at 10 p.m. East African time, or that is 2022 hours, 24-hour clock. Tonight, we'll be speaking about the UEFA Champions League final, but also tomorrow morning between 11 and midday, we'll be back again to speak more about the UEFA Champions League final. Yeah, that is between PSG and Inter Milan. PSG have never won it. Inter Milan have won it 3 times. That was in 1961, 62, and then in 62, 63. So they won it back to back. And then, of course, they won it in 2010. That was 2009, 2010 season when they beat Bayern Munich in the final. They were still under the charges of Jose Mourinho. So that is Inter Milan for you. They've been. This is going to be their second final that they play in the last 3 years. Remember, in 2023 they reached the finals and lost to Man City. That goal by Rodri, which won the game. Then the other comment is from again. Peter comes back to say, a shout out to you, Abdulaziz Al Abdallah. sometimes my tongue it gets tongue twisted pronouncing some of your names. Peter, you come back to say Milos Kakes is now in Liverpool. Is it true? I do not think he's in Liverpool yet, but the reports I'm getting is that personal terms are not an issue between the player and Liverpool. That he's given the green light to Liverpool, but Liverpool are yet to agree to a fee with AFC Bournemouth. So we are waiting for the two clubs to agree on a fee over the potential transfer of Milos Kakes. The 21-year-old Hungarian left back he did join them from AZ Alkmaar, I think in July. Was it July? Yes, July 2023. And at Alkmaar, he had joined them in January 2022 when he joined them from AC Milan. So, very young, good player. Born in Serbia, but he does feature for the Hungarian national team. So that's the news regarding Milos Kakes. And then what else? What else have we not tackled? I think pretty much we've covered a majority of it. We've pretty much covered most of it. We've pretty much covered most of the reports that have surfaced. Now, maybe the other thing is that Arsenal fans, again, they are still torn in that debate of Gyökeres, Sesko. Some prefer Gyökeres, others are okay with Sesko. I mean, that is going to be an endless debate until Arsenal sign one of them. So we will entertain that debate for as long as it rages on. So yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled out there. Anyways, guys, it's been an interesting conversation. It's been 1 hour and 36 minutes of speaking football, of speaking sport. Thank you so much for always joining us. John Joseph from Nigeria. Greetings to you, sir. Thank you for being with us on today's broadcast. Ashley Sebrella. It was a pleasure having you. Vincent stayed us with a very short stint, but it was a pleasure having you, Vincent. Ahmed Spata, it was a pleasure having you with us. Amrek, it was a pleasure having you with us, brother. Peter Parker, always a usual suspect, always a pleasure to have him on the podcast. He says Tijan Reenders will join Man City. Yes, Man City have submitted a bid of up to 16 million euros to see if they can sign the 26-year-old Dutch international. He plays in the central midfield as predominantly as a number 8, has scored about 10 goals in the Serie A this season and provided about, I think, 4 assists or thereabout. So his numbers are really looking good. Man City, because remember, again, I did a video about Man City and why they could be unstoppable next season. Guys, do check that out. Do check out that video on the channel. It did premiere at about 9 a.m. Go check it out, watch it, like, share, comment on that video. It's entirely about Man City, what their targets are in this transfer window, what kind of moves they've already made. But maybe the other thing that we can speak about Man City beyond their attempts to sign Tijan Reenders is that they've lost their coaching staff. 3 members of their coaching staff have left them. 2 of them had their contracts expire, and then the other has left. That's Carlos Siven. Yes, Carlos Siven has left. Daniel Tuton is here with us. Hi, Daniel. It's been a while since we were last with you. I hope you're doing well in life. I hope you do not have any concerns that kept you away. But it's good to have you back. Yes, we are speaking about those Man City coaching staff. We are champions. We are champions. Come on, Liverpool. Indeed, you are champions. Again, apologies sorry, Daniel Tuton, about the unfortunate incidences that happened on Monday during the trophy parade with that van, ramming into the supporters. I hope you are not among those or the casualties or within that area. But if that were the case, we do wish you a quick recovery or anything in that respect. So Man City are losing a part of their coaching staff. and Carlos Vicens, yes, not Steven, Carlos Vicens has gone to AC Braga in Portugal. He's going to be their coach there. And then Joan Maliro and Inigo Dominguez, those had their contracts expire. And then, so Man City are now looking at their former player in Habib Koiture. Remember, he did play for them for 4 years when he left Arsenal, and he was part of the Premier League title winning squad under Roberto Mancini. That was in 2011-2012 season. So then after he retired, of course, he stayed at Man City for a little bit, and then he joined Celtic under Brendan Rodgers. He was an assistant coach there. He left with Brendan Rodgers from Celtic and joined him at Leicester City, and they won the 2021 FA Cup, and then moved on. He did have a stint with Wigan as the head coach, but that stint was short-lived as he was sacked due to a run of bad results. And then he did return to Man City as a deputy at the under 18. So he's an assistant coach at the under 18 at Man City. And then the other person that is being considered for that vacant, Pep Guardiola deputy role or part of the coaching staff is Pep Linders. And now, for those of you that do remember, I'm sure Daniel Tuton knows Pep Linders too well because he was Jurgen Klopp's one of assistants, part of that coaching staff that guided Liverpool to the championship of the UEFA Champions League in 2019, was part of Liverpool when they won the Premier League in 2020, and only left Liverpool only 12 months ago when Jurgen Klopp was signing out. And then when he left Liverpool, he joined Red Bull Salzburg as the head coach, but he was sacked in December due to a run of bad results. So he was sacked and has since been on gardening leave. So those are the two top candidates that are vying for the role of assistant coach at Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. So that is the news at Man City. Daniel says hi, and he says, Benjamin, can you say hi to him, please? Who is Benjamin? Is that your son, your brother, your friend? Hi, Benjamin, whoever you are. I would want to assume you're there seated with Daniel listening to us. Hi, Benjamin, how are you doing? Are you also a Liverpool fan? It's good to have you on the broadcast. But yeah, that's the news from Man City in regards to the pursuit for Tijani Reinders. Yes, they are well in trying to pursue him, although AC Milan want up to 80 million euros if they are to let him go, but those negotiations will go on. And Man City want to wrap up that deal before the start of the FIFA Club World Cup, and at least that is what the ideal expectation or what they would love to happen for them. So anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure having you. It's 1 hour and 43 minutes of us on this broadcast. I think like all good things come to one end, this broadcast has equally come to its end. Thank you to all our new community members, our new subscribers, our usual suspects. Peter Parker is the usual suspect. Daniel Tuton, yes, we missed him and Peter in the last day or two, but they're back with us. Maria Momoto, Amlen, and all the other usual suspects that do usually come and join the conversation here. Let's rejoin. Let's meet again later tonight at 10 p.m. East African time, or 22 hours thereabouts. It will be about 8 p.m. in the UK, possibly maybe up around midnight in India or thereabout. But we'll be back here to discuss all matters sport. We'll be looking at the UEFA Champions League final and then get into the conversation of whatever news will be out there. It's been a pleasure having you. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Stay blessed and bye-bye for now.